Alright everyone, we're going to get started. Yeah, some people may be being late, but it's already full 10. So I have a tendency to kind of really over-plan, so we might not get to everything. But try to scrunch it in. So welcome to today's Tech Talk on Information Security, Security Online. I am Andrew Mantuano. I'm the coordinator of Education and Outreach Coordinator in NITS. And for the past 6 or 7 months or so, the largest chunk of my outreach and education efforts have been focused on information security. And I think as a whole, our community has taken a lot of great strides towards a culture of information security, and that's thanks in large part to Gina Seesing and the Information Stewardship Council, which Maria Wemkin is going to speak about later. So yeah, people have been kind of locking their computers more often while around. I've been referred to as the cyber ninja, which is quite flattering in this context. But we have a lot more work to do. So today is just kind of a broad stroke of discussions around best practices and how it affects and how information security affects us here at college, at home, and also while we're out and about living our lives. So does everyone have an iClicker? All right, so as you're eating, I'd like to ask you a few poll questions. And I'd like to ask you to be completely 100% honest. There will be no shaming. I won't stand for it. All the responses are completely anonymous, so don't worry.
What do you say?
I will.
Where should we put it?
Yeah, the base station is located right at the center there. So the first question is, how many characters are in your VMC password? And there's a range here. So if you've never used an iClicker before, it should be on and say ready on the screen. So just choose the letter that corresponds to your password. And then we can see the responses.
Your results went away.
Okay, so I'm in. Is anyone else ready?
Question two. Could you move the question?
Sorry, Alright, so play here, right?
Yep.
Alright, so now choose your response. Don't be ashamed if you have to count your fingers.
We're all answering questions.
That's fine. It's not correlated to the actual
So 7.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of 10 and 11ers. No one is over 20? I guess
I am sometimes over 20, but not today.
Cool. Alright, so let's go to the next question. Alright, so for the most part, do you use different passwords for the various online services you use? So either A, yes, or B, no.
Keeping in mind that we are self-selected from a group of people who decided to attend.
Right, yeah. So yeah, it's not a surprise that we're in the blue here. Okay. Question 3. Which of these companies do you trust the least with your sensitive data?
Andrew, guess what my answer is?
We
And,
all know what you're in.
I guess you can press E, all of the above, if you don't trust anyone.
Oh, but you didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious.
You can change your answer. Alright, so Google. Okay. Let's go on to the last one. Do you lock your computer when you walk away from it?
There's not I would get fired if I didn't button.
That's insane.
Alright, thank you for that honesty, whoever said no.
It's the person who's running out the door to go back to
Alright. Alright, so now I'd just like to share a few, a resource and a story pertaining to the poll questions that you just answered. So, I was recently forwarded this infographic from Stanford University's IT departments, and they did a great job of compiling a resource for their community members on how to create effective secure passwords. And I know within Brynmar we have our own criteria that you need to meet, but this is just something to keep in mind when you're creating your next password for your online service that you use. So Stanford argues that if your password is shorter and more complex, if it's shorter, it needs to be more complex, so it needs to have mixed cases, numerals, and special characters, and you might have created those kinds of passwords or seen them where there's character substitutions, the dollar sign is an S, or the exclamation point is an I. And really, those are not effective in terms of stopping a brute force attack, so a computer guessing your password. Computers can really work quickly to crack those passwords. And the downside for us as humans is that they're difficult for us to remember. So it's really ineffective all around. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, if your password is longer and simpler, as you can see, 20 plus characters, they're saying you don't even need any mixed cases or special characters. It could just be all lowercase, easy to remember, easier to type, and easier to enter on your mobile devices. So they're actually recommending for their community members 16 characters or more. And their methodology for creating these passphrases is just selecting 4 random words. So I could say, window, Jenny, table, chicken salad, and that's my password. And it'd be so much more effective at stopping a brute force attack than a shorter, more complex password. And with spaces, you can even limit that up to 21. This is a relatively well-known XKCD comic that kind of reiterates that point. As you can see, this fancy, complex troubadour password is actually more crackable than correct horse battery staple. So a computer guessing 1,000 guesses a second will only take 3 days for that really hard to remember password. But this guy down here that's all lowercase, just 4 random words, would take them 550 years. So that's just something to keep in mind next time you're creating a password.
Now there are some experts who argue with some of this and say that using dictionary words is still not the best thing to do. Truth of the matter is that if you're using an 8 or even a 9-character password, that all the passwords have been what's called hashed. So basically your password is encrypted, and there's a database of what the encrypted value is versus what the actual value is that someone can access in milliseconds. So that password, regardless of how complex it is basically entirely useless against a brute force attack. So that's why this longer, more complex password kind of thing. Adding punctuation, adding numbers that make sense in the, even if you said, instead of Mary had a little lamb, if you said Mary had one little lamb and added a period at the end, you would be more secure than if you just used the words. Mm-hmm. So people are still encouraging that you add additional kinds of characters.
And I think David Bertani mentioned that all 10-character passwords, all possible combinations that you can use are already hashed. So if you have a 10-character password, you will soon be not secure at all. So pertaining to questions 2 and 3 about using various passwords for the different services you use and also trusting companies, this is a story about a man named Josh Bryant. I was reading an article on Ars Technica the other day, and he owns a startup called Droplr, which is a file sharing and collaboration tool. And his Twitter and Instagram handle is JB. And normally this wouldn't have any significance if it weren't for the existence of 2 of our favorite musical acts, the Beavs and the Jonas Brothers. So his handle has enormous marketing potential. So he receives offers of inordinate sums of money from people wanting to purchase that handle from him. But unfortunately, he also has people trying to steal it, or to steal it from him. And one day, a particularly clever cyber criminal took a more circuitous route. So rather than trying to just kind of brute force attack his Twitter or Instagram accounts, this cybercriminal went through the trouble of kind of scouring the internet for all the publicly available data, information on Josh that he could get from various sites, and using that information as well as social engineering techniques, he called up Amazon, pretending to be Josh, and said, "Hey, this is Josh. I need my password reset." And the Amazon representative, unfortunately, permitted that and said, "Okay, I'll send you the link. What's your email address?" So the cybercriminal was able to gain access to his Amazon accounts, which included his credit card information, his home address, and other personal data that he shouldn't have had access to. Fortunately for Josh, he was able to realize what was happening and reset his password before the cybercriminal could do any more damage. But it wasn't until a few days later that Josh really understood the full implications of what happens. So Josh's business, Droplr, uses Amazon cloud storage services for their business. And the cybercriminal had full access to that data. So that means they had access to his financial information, all of his customers' data. So just imagine if that had gotten public, he would have been in ruins. Just simply from having his information out there online and from the unfortunate decision from the Amazon rep to reset the password. So that's just something to keep in mind next time you're thinking about using an online service or advocating for your department to get a certain service. You really need to think critically about what it means for your information to be on that services servers.
There's actually a fairly well-known story about a different blogger who basically these people are social engineers, basically. Collected his public information, and then I forget whether he went to Amazon to get the information that would get him into Apple or vice versa, but basically he was able to, as he gathered information, go from service to service to service to service, and basically take over this person's entire online handles. Now, this person is a blogger at a major blog, and that was very professionally embarrassing for him. So it's, now some of these services have locked down some of those things. You may notice that if you log into your Amazon or your Apple account, you can't get to a full credit card number anymore. You can't get to, and they become stricter as to how you must identify yourself. But there comes a point when there's no amount of information that you know about yourself that you can give them to identify yourself solely. So it's a really hard question about this whole give me personal information to identify yourself. That in itself is also kind of wonky.
Alright, so introductions are usually first, but I thought they fit better here. So I already introduced myself. I did ask Amy to come, kind of help me, so I'm sorry I didn't.
I'm sorry, totally didn't introduce
Amy
myself.
Perlman, this is Maria Mkin, and Kirsten O'Byrne is coming to talk about FERPA. Alright, so today's topic, like I mentioned, is kind of nebulous. I've actually been on this huge science kick.
You should actually ask the question, is everybody familiar with the whole IS to LITS change? We're using this word. Okay. So nobody's like wondering.
Yeah, we're good. Effective communications.
Good job.
Yeah. Has anyone seen Neil deGrasse Tyson's Exploring the Cosmos series on Netflix? Yeah, I've been really pumped in it. It's got me. I'm really into science right now. But anyway, so
I'm
the
really into Neil deGrasse Tyson.
yeah. So the universe of information security is really vast, and there's probably hundreds of topics we could choose to talk about. But like I mentioned before, we're going to focus more on the best practices that you all employ in your day-to-day, and hopefully share and swap strategies and talk about what we can do to be even more secure. So to start out, I'd like you guys to participate in a pair and share. So find a partner, someone sitting next to you, or maybe form a trio, and go through these 6 questions. You don't have to answer them all, but just discuss amongst yourselves for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to the larger group and share things that were particularly interesting to you, or things that you disagreed on, or contentious, or whatever you'd like to share. All right? Ready? Go. All right, everyone. Let's bring it back in. Would anyone like to start sharing something that they discussed with their partner?
Well, just the Wi-Fi network systems, both at Bryn Mawr and at home.
Can I go on, kind of tail on to that? I'm a little concerned that Edgerome has become the default connection for campus.
Why are you concerned about that?
Wired connections. It just seems to me that wired connections ultimately are a little less vulnerable.
Do you want me to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay. So, in a way, yes, and in a way, no. Our wired connections here are actually not encrypted at all. So if you're on our network and you manage to get on the right subnet and someone is sending unencrypted information that their browser or something else is not encrypting, it's actually less secure because of the way we have it configured. Whereas the WPA2 encryption that we use a high level, high number of bits of encryption for WPA2, and it's using your username and password. It's giving you an encrypted tunnel for whatever you're passing. I'm actually okay with it for those reasons. I won't tell you it's unbreakable, although to say the AES that we're using is not known to be broken. But I'm fairly comfortable with it. It's very hard for us to go encrypted over wire because some of the systems that control the HVAC are on the wire, and the systems that control some of these other things are on the wire, and they're not compliant with encryption, and that's why we haven't encrypted the wire. It's a little bit problematic, but actually I think it's an even trade-off between the bubble of the physical infrastructure versus the high level of encryption. Now, if you want to talk about how I feel about Guest, that's a whole different conversation because that's an unencrypted network. And we do have some people who sit on that network and use it. Not as many as we used to. But do I have concern about that? Sure I do. But I'm not overly concerned about it because of the level of encryption it does use. Does that make sense to you? I mean,
just curious, does everyone know how to configure your encryption level on your home wireless network? So, changing it to WPA2 rather than like WP or WPA.
WP, that's the one you don't want.
I will admit that before I started doing this type of work, mine was set to WP, and once I saw the internet, like, oh god, I gotta change it. So I went home right away and did it. So it's really no.
It's close to my house where our campus network engineer frequently visits and changes the security to be more secure while not looking.
Although we've had issues with, we haven't gone to WPA because the devices don't always work with it, and so we haven't been active with it.
Yeah, some of the older routers don't even support WPA2.
Older routers, but we also have older computers, things we can hang on to for a while.
It's absolutely true, but if you have Windows machines, you can usually replace the driver for a newer driver. If you have Mac, you are SOL.
Yeah.
Update to the highest level of software you can, but if you have older ones, then they won't go forward. There is absolutely nothing you can do about that.
Anything else people want to share out from your conversations?
We were briefly talking about we don't really have a very good understanding of the college policy in terms of privacy concerns or for example, like the browser, the computer in colleges. But if you browse to Amazon's whatever, would those traffic be logged or will those be something?
We do not log. We do not log. We do not packet snap.
Right. So
I cannot promise that the FBI doesn't have a tab at the ISP, but there's a one here.
There's one thing. If they come here, they say, "I need to log. I need to so somebody's suspicious, and I need whatever it is and that." So while we actually started doing those kind of things, and so that's the sort of thing. Was that it's a liberal arts college, and what is the policy in terms of those kind of privacy kind of
we're fairly liberal about the policy because of the kind of institution that we are. We do not log people's internet traffic. We do not packet sniff people's internet traffic or type it in any way. We don't look at your encrypted packets at all. We do keep track for 90 days who had what IP, especially in the wireless. If you're on the wired, you're a college-owned computer, somebody owns that computer, somebody is logged into that computer. We have ways of tracking that as well. For 90 days. If they come to us after 90 days, we tell them that our policy is 90 days and we no longer have the information that they are looking for. Please have a nice day. And actually, we tell the DMCA people that all the time. They'll send us something and say, well, I want something from last May, and we say, we only have it for 90 days. Sorry, I can't help you. But there are different kinds of things that are logged. If you're using Moodle logs almost everything. And we still only hold that for 90 days, but it logs everything you do in Moodle. PeopleSoft, as you well know, logs everything you do in PeopleSoft for audit reasons. So there are kinds of logging, but it's not your general use, and there isn't any policy telling you that you can't use your college-assigned computer for reasonable personal use. There is very little policy here about a lot of things. So you can use it. Now, if you end up virusing it again and again and again, I'm probably going to talk to your supervisor. But, within reason, no one cares.
So I'm going to ask Maria to speak a little bit about the Information Stewardship Council. This is not an actual picture of us, although we are happy to be doing
Yes,
that work.
but it does reflect how the council
It does.
feels about the council. Okay. I am the co-chair of the council, and one of the things, the charges of the council was that on an annual basis, the co-chair would be reassigned. So I'm halfway through my term. And it was formed this past summer by Gina. This is something that's happening at actually at all of our peer institutions. Some are way ahead of us in this area, some are where we are, and some have yet to figure it out. But this is not a Bryn Mawr unique initiative. And what the council is hoping to achieve is to find out where the vulnerabilities are for the information, how to remediate, how to educate, how to prevent, and just try to manage this information in a way that is reasonable with regard to college, what we're supposed to be doing in college in our day-to-day jobs, as opposed to what federal regulations or state regulations, compliance issues would require us to do, because we could be hamstrung if we follow the letter of the law exactly all the time and fretted about stuff continuously. This Information Stewardship Council is a very broad and wide-reaching group, but what I've found out over the past few months is most people on campus don't even know about it. I'm guessing everybody in this room does. Is there anybody who just barely knows about it, knows it exists, but doesn't know what it does? Because I don't want to go into great detail. Okay. Well, it's interesting. Okay. Because it's coming from Liz. And
I would say that Gina would say it is not coming from Liz, but facilitated by it.
It's facilitated by it because as we all know, it really comes down to what Andrew keeps saying, securing the human. If we can secure the human, we can probably secure the data. But just getting the humans in the room, talking to them about these issues is I think one of the primary challenges, especially at Bryn Mawr. But the council has representatives from all over campus. One of the primary objectives for this first year was to identify just what is this data that we are supposed to, over which we are stewards, whether it's just the menu in dining services or social security numbers in human resources, but what is this data over which we are only stewards, we're employees of the college, doesn't belong to us, and we can't be careless with it and hand it out willy-nilly. It's essentially the new awareness that some of us have to gain. So an inventory was done this late winter, I guess through late winter. In February, it was presented to the council. It had, I guess it was the second or third meeting. And over about 24, maybe a little less, departments participated in this survey. And they enumerated probably the top 10 things that would, if you wanted to ask the question as what keeps you up at night, those were the top 10 things. And needless to say, Human Resources had a whole series of items because it's all personal data. But when you went around campus in these 24 departments, it essentially was everybody had something to put on that list. Everybody, including housekeeping. And particularly housekeeping because they're employees who walk in and out. Sometimes we don't even know they're in and out of your office, but it's of concern to them. Not that they're generating it, but they're being exposed to it. And what do they do as employees? Seeing paperwork on a desk, in a trash can, maybe a screen that was not locked down. So it's an issue for everyone on campus. So it's prevention, detection, response, and recovery. Hopefully the recovery part doesn't happen because of the first three, preventing, detecting, and responding. But we've had to, as we all know, we've been compromised with emails, and recovery is a big part of how Lick spends their time often because we mess things up for the college. So one of my charges was to come up with some guidelines on what is this personally identifiable information, which is a very specific type of information, or the type of information that we should be very, very careful about. And the list, there's no way to get a comprehensive list except to say it's just about everything that every one of us might be exposed to, maybe not daily, but on some type of frequent basis. So, okay, so this is coming around, and this is a draft, and these are guidelines. But data is usually classified into the very, very secure, and the not so secure. Then it's stuff that you can share with people, and then the stuff that's publicly available. So this level 1, however we want to call it, has a wide variety of information. And the Social Security numbers, everybody knows that, passwords. But one of the things not on here that I ran across days after the meeting is even your mother's maiden name. And that's something that, of course, was hinted at. I mean, if your mother's maiden, if you have your family history on your Facebook account, and everybody, and all of the bank, what is your mother's maiden? These secure, right? These secure questions. This will keep somebody. You have a site key, and you answer these questions. What's your favorite hobby? Your pet's name?
Your high school's mascot. I think that one.
Your his.
Facebook group, right?
You think you are making your banking site more secure by answering these questions, and what you're really doing is, if you have a Facebook account that has that same information, it's a breeze. I probably could hack it, which would be saying something. So you have to be very good. So maybe your mother's maiden name is more important for personal things, but I know as someone who deals with TD Bank, does the same thing. I go into Treasury Direct every day for the college. They ask me those same types of questions when I set up my account. So even whether it's for my TD Bank, my personal account, or the college's account, they're both at this risk because it comes down to the human. Did Maria put her mom's maiden name in there? Did she pick her father? Or did she pick, and which pet did she pick? But it's not, it's very, very easy. So this list is a start, and you probably can think of other things, but it's just to get you thinking about the fact that you are exposed to this every day, and then you expose others. I know for me the biggest vulnerability, I was telling Billy Children, is email, and we've been hearing for years from Amy, it's a postcard. If you wouldn't send this out on a postcard through U.S. mail for everybody to read, then don't put it out in email. And yet I catch myself still adding just campus mail, sending it to department, putting an attachment on, and thinking the mail's fine, here's the attachment. There's nothing in the mail, it's the attachment that's the issue. Is there something on there that I would not want intercepted, especially if I'm using I'm hardwired, I'm not using the Wi-Fi system, it could be intercepted, maybe not, but it could be, it's not encrypted, and there it is. So it's a whole list of everybody, payroll, social security numbers, date of birth, how much they made, where they live, and it's all there.
Due to our wonderful lack of policy here, you don't know if the person you're sending that to has then forwarded their account to Gmail or has
Absolutely.
done something else like that. So even if it's within our system, if you're doing it in your staff members, you probably shouldn't be. But basically, there are cases where we find that somebody who's in a situation where they are responsible for protecting data has done something like forward their account to an outside service or filter their account into a shared mailbox that they're sharing with their secretary, or password sharing in violation of the acceptable use policy, or any of those kinds of things. So even within our own system, privacy is not assured. And once you send that email, the person can print it, the person can forward it, the person can refile it. You have lost control of that data.
Right. Well, and that can happen even if you do everything. If you share a file folder on a shared drive and you put that sensitive data in that file folder, that other person can open it and be careless with it. But at least it's not your fault if they did that. But it's just raising awareness of what you do, stopping and thinking for 2 seconds. Should I be sending this through email? I've lived long enough. It might be that we go back to just paper and pencil for everything. It'll be interesting to see. So the other side of this piece of paper is the level 2, 3, and 4. For example, personnel files, they're paper files in HR, and I don't want to keep picking on them, but it's quite clear. Those files are shared, but on a need-to-know basis, and I can assure you HR reads through them to make sure that only the shareable information is in the file when it's handed to someone else. And then there's that administrative data, numbers and statistics. Sometimes you think they're anonymous, but if there's one person in the department and you're sharing salaries in that department, then you're pretty much telling the world what so-and-so makes in a particular department. And then there's public data, which is pretty much very little about the college, is at level 4. So the best practices are securing the human, employee training. Hopefully the attendance at sessions like this will increase as people become maybe panicked, maybe they do need to be a little bit more frightened and worried about things. Data protection, this is a combination of technical and just human again, if it's a password type thing, or physical locking down. Does your office lock? If so, when you leave, you should close it. And after last week's theft of equipment, you couldn't think of a worse double whammy. So have sensitive data, and then the person doesn't need, they have all the leisure time in the world because they can sit, with a sandwich at night and start hacking your computer because it's on in their living room instead of in your office. So there are all kinds of things you can do to physically protect the data. Make sure passwords are good passwords, and I think some of us will be changing some of our passwords when we get back. The security patches and fixes, a lot of them are for security. So don't say, I'm too busy, I don't have the time now. Do you have the time to be talking to the college's lawyers? That's the question.
Or to the FBI.
Yes, or the FBI. So ask yourself, do you have 5 minutes now, or do you want to spend 5 weeks, 5 months later doing something else? Antivirus protection, the colleges seems to be quite good. Make sure you're doing all this for mobile devices. That's where the risks are increasing. People are looking at their email on the email, as we all know. I don't use this, but I hear of it.
Can I interject a couple of things?
Yes.
One, the college actually pays for a license so that you can use college antivirus on your home computers. If you have a Mac, you still should be running antivirus. There seems to be an illusion that Macs are somehow completely virus-prone. You can still pass viruses on to a PC user, and there are some really impressive little rootkits for Macs. And when you get screwed on a Mac, you The other thing is I understand that passcodes and encrypting your devices is inconvenient. Honestly, get over it, because if you lose your device on a bus, it's probably not just your college stuff, it's probably your personal stuff. If you think about what's in your personal email accounts and how somebody can get into your bank records, and your phone's an identity fraud toolkit. So that's, I mean, for a personal level, that's not a day anybody wants to have. It really isn't, so.
Okay.
I'll help you out, Maria, it'll be alright.
Although again, my phone is still just a phone mostly. And then the last thing down there is third parties. This doesn't affect everyone, but a lot of us outsource. The college's investments, for example, are all over the place at various banks, JP Morgan and whatever. All of those organizations that provide those services to other companies undergo an annual audit of their IT departments. And if you're using one of them, you should be asking to see that audit, because I've seen quite a few of them, and it's astounding how weak some of these third-party organizations are in the comments about security breaches within their systems that the auditors find. The auditors find 10% of what's going on, as far as I know. So you should be asking for those types of things.
I would think that you would know. Maria has a very strong background, for those who don't know, in the financial.
And it weakens by the day. And then now, the last thing down here, please contact blah, blah, blah. And this goes back to what are the policies. Each department probably has specific policies, even if they're not written, about what to do. The college is hoping to have broader policies, non-restrictive, but guideline-type policies. I know Lids has their own internal procedures that they follow. So what you should be doing is thinking, just doing your own mental inventory. What do I have? And you pretty much should assume that's a sensitive data unless someone tells you otherwise. And that's it.
Shift gears a bit and play a little game, variation of Guess Who. So we don't have the board, so you can't slap down the character you don't like. But so I handed out those note cards, and don't turn them over yet. I'm sorry. So each color represents a different mystery person, and each card itself contains a piece of information about that person. So there's a number on the top. So we'll read them in chronological order. Don't turn over until it's your turn. And after each person reads their card, you can guess who you think it might be. And as an example, we'll go through this together. So number one would read, birthday is July 7th, 1946. Any guesses? Probably not. Birthplace is New Haven, Connecticut. Male. This might be a good one. An excerpt from his transcripts at Yale, Classical Civilization, he got a 78. Any guesses from this? Yes. Mother's maiden name.
Yeah,
George Bush.
Yeah.
I can figure
W78.
That's W. All right. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the green, but let's start with orange. So who's one with orange? Joe. All right.
So date of birth, January 29th, 1954.
All right. Two.
Gender, female. Lives in.
You have to read them all, Chris. Many homes. Any guesses right now? Number four.
Number 4, credit card information. Type American Express Centurion.
Yeah, you don't have to read it.
Okay.
So, Jess is Centurion. And lastly.
And you found the card number. Good job.
What's Bill? Oh, female.
Any guesses?
Bill's wife.
Who?
Oprah?
Yep.
Oh,
You got it. Great. All right. So last one, pink. Who's number one?
Me.
Esther.
Date of birth, May 14th, 1984.
Number two.
Gender male.
Three.
Currently lives in Palo Alto, California.
Four.
Salary $1.
Any guesses right now?
Mark Zuckerberg.
You got it. And this photo is there, Mark in all his glory. All right, so this is just wasn't just a fun little break. It was meant to highlight how seemingly innocuous information can be combined with other pieces of data to uniquely identify someone. So imagine if any of those people were Bryn Mawr community members, and it was on our watch that data was exposed. There are many financial consequences. There's reputational hits that affect institutions. So going into more about personal information, this is just an alphabet soup of laws and regulations that we have to follow in order to stay in compliance. And those of you who work with sensitive data on a regular basis, like Kirsten, who's going to speak about FERPA in a little bit, they know about more of the intricacies of those laws and regulations. But for the average community member, it's not really it's not really in our best interest to delve into each one of these. It's more the goal of our education and awareness initiatives is to have everyone at a certain base level understanding, like Maria said, so securing the human, so that they can be informed enough to make a good security decision in order to prevent or ask good questions and reach out. Curiosity is a great thing with security if you're not sure if you're making the right decision. So this is obviously a fake news article, thank goodness. So in this fake scenario, over 35,000 records were exposed. It cost the college millions of dollars.
That's a really... it seems like a scary number, but that's a very conservative number for what that would have cost us.
Right. So the Ponemon Institutes, I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they did a study in 2014 on the average cost of data breaches in higher education, and the average cost per record is $111. So at our institution, if there was a minor data breach, it would be a hit. But imagine.
The $111 doesn't count lost revenue from donors who no longer trust you.
Right.
That's,
That
only
factors
out
in.
one person's will, and that number goes right up.
Right. So that's like credit monitoring, identity theft protection, and any other legal fees of that sort. But bigger schools like the University of Indiana, or Indiana University, where they had over 140,000 records, that really builds up quickly. And I'll pick on them again. They spent over $75,000 alone just to establish a call center to notify the people who were affected in the data breach. So that's just a huge...
Let's bring something closer to home. Haverford had to do this for 12 people, and it cost them several $1,000s. They did this last year. They had 12 Social Security numbers get breached. Because
electronic breaching?
Somebody, years and years ago, stored a file with Social Security numbers in it on their web server, and it got crawled by Google, and somebody searched her husband's name, and Along's mom searched her husband's name. Haverford's record came up, and she, very brightly, pitched a fit. Why is my husband's Social Security number exposed? So they bought all of them, identity protection, and they did all the things that they were supposed to do. But it's already cost them thousands of dollars, and that's 12. Haverford's not a very big place. We're not a very big place. That's cut to somebody's budget.
So going on that, sure you knew it. FERPA! Hey,
People say it can't happen to us.
No.
People say it can't happen to us, and that's crap. It can happen to us easier.
We're at Registrar's Office, and FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which covers student educational records solely. And it was created to sort of have a two-pronged effect. One is to give students access to their educational records and the ability to review them and petition to annotate them if they feel that something is misrepresented, and to also put in place a protection for them for their information being released beyond the college community. It does allow for people who work at the college to have access about a student that is considered to be educational use. So I work in the registrar's office. It is perfectly fine for faculty to send me student grades. It's fine for me to talk to a faculty member about student grades. I don't really have a reason to know about, say, giving history or their financial aid package or things like that. So while that's still information that the college needs to have, I don't necessarily need to have that. So we wouldn't want to have one list that says every single data point about a student and share it around to anybody who asks. You know, on a class roster, faculty doesn't need to see whether a student gets financial aid or not. That's not an educational use. But it shouldn't hamper the way we can communicate about a student and information that we have tracked. The important thing is to remember how you can give that information out if you have access to it, and when you shouldn't, not to mention the ways that you shouldn't, even when you are allowed to exchange it, but more importantly, just remembering that, you know, when somebody calls over the phone and says, you know, I'm Sally Jo's mom, and I want to know how she did in her math class. We can't talk about that over the phone. And, you know, sometimes that upsets the people who are on the other end of the phone, but we still have to say, I'm sorry, I can't, you know. One, I'm not allowed to talk about Sally Jo with you unless I know that you really are her mom. Even if I know you're her mom, I'm technically, because she's a college student, not allowed to talk to you about it. In high school, it's different. Parents are allowed to have access. As soon as a student, even if they're not 18, enters college, the burden shifts to the student. So the student technically has to give permission. The only proviso is that if you are the custodial parent and are paying the bill, there's a provision in the rule that allows you to have access, but that information has to be verified first. So that makes it pretty complicated because most of us don't know who's paying the bill unless we work in student financial services. So it's better to err on the side of saying, I can't talk about that over the phone. We need to protect your daughter's privacy. The kind of things that can be released are whether a student is enrolled, as long as the student hasn't asked to protect that information. We can give, you know, someone says, we can verify information out. You know, yes. You want to verify that Sally Jane is here? Yes. You know, she's enrolled as a student in the undergraduate college in the Bachelor of Arts program. You want to verify?
But I want her schedule.
I'm sorry, I can't get that out. If you want to say to me, and we have her address as being, you know, 753 Main Street, you know, Town, USA, I can say that matches what we have on file. If you say to me, can I have her address? No. Can't get that information out. Students have the right to restrict even that information to the point of us not even being able to say they're enrolled. And they have the access to do that right through Bionic. It's a self-service piece, and you know, very, very few people restrict to that level, but when they do, they usually do it for a really good reason. Because they've had problems in the past, they are, you know, actively trying to shield someone from finding them. So it's incredibly important to be able to access that information. And in Bionic, on a student, I don't know how everybody accesses Bionic, or people do, but you know, there's a little thing that looks like a window shade in the corner of a lot of student pages. And if you click on that, it shows you what the student has restricted. Majority of students restrict. The only thing they restrict is their photographs, so it doesn't show up in the community directory. And we have a special, super easy flag for that. But it's something to be aware of. It doesn't restrict within the community, but it could. So in theory, the student could actually say, I don't want my information to flow through Google. And if they said that, then we would have to either put in a dummy name or lock them in some other way that would make it you not be able to identify them within Moodle if you were in a class with them. Luckily, we haven't had anybody that want to do that, so we have to figure out exactly what to do. Let's see, how about what else you guys want to know?
I have a question. We don't have any faculty here, unfortunately. We have a few who were coming but couldn't. But what? So grades, I know. I think everybody in faculty tend to know that that's an educational record. I think there's a lot of confusion about things leading up to grades, like the information that's on Google. We have various sites that track what students are doing, or students can post to them, and those kinds of things.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, if a student chooses to post, then they're making a choice, and that's fine. But that would be the case where, particularly in Moodle, if someone really had a privacy concern, where they might want to use an alias within Moodle, so that if they were part of a discussion group, or for some reason, faculty's teaching a course where they have their, it's part of a larger project that they're doing, so their discussion is open, right? Then you could have a student who did not wants to be able to participate, needs to participate fully in the class, but doesn't want their name exposed. And that would be fine. We'd have to work on how to protect that piece.
In a previous world where, before some of these things were well laid out, there were some courses back in the time when maybe Jenny and I were in college, where people were told that they had to post publicly as a part of a course, and some of them have come back to us and said, no, really, I want that stuff removed. It's been on the public internet long enough that if you go search it in the Wayback Machine, it's there. And they've got it. We can't get it removed from every internet archive that there is, but we are willing to remove it, for example, from WordMar servers and advise them on how to go get it removed from some of these other things. But there's a lot more sophistication and a lot more nuance in how we talk about these things now, and how we work from the beginning to protect student privacy. I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome. Because the Wayback Machine is one of the
Challenges,
things change, and sometimes people don't think about, or their circumstance changes, and so.
Moodle's behind authentication. It's why it's become so popular for things to be behind authentication. But if, a faculty member is requiring you to use a public blog, you should be thoughtful, or advise students to be thoughtful about that,
Is Moodle at the intranet or on the internet?
We don't have such a concept here. It is purely authenticated. Basically, you can't get into anything on Moodle except maybe the main page with some documentation, without having a tri-college login of some kind. And you can't get into a particular course without being a member of that particular course. It has very squared away. It takes into account, it was built to take into account all of these kinds of issues. All the major learning management systems were. So Moodle has been good for us from this standpoint because it does basically limit access to various things to the people in and teaching those courses. A very small number of admins like me and Chris are totally trustworthy. Sometimes there's an academic assistant or something who uploads things to it, but typically can't see student content. There's those kinds of role splitting. So there's all kinds of shades of what we can set in Moodle to allow only as much access as you should have.
Some of these things are more relevant to faculty, as Jenny said, but they can be relevant to other people. We used to be quite more casual about ID numbers. And it goes back to anything that's personally identifiable, just as it would be for us, anything, is covered under FERPA, and it goes a little deeper. But you shouldn't, if you have student workers and you're putting up a schedule, you don't want to put their ID number out next to their name, because then those two things can be matched, and now the help desk uses that to, be part of an authentication with other pieces of data, but just like, okay, I grabbed this piece here, and this piece here, and this piece here, it's the same idea. Anything that, really identifies the student that can be used to delve deeper to identify them shouldn't be associated with their name. So, the list of names is fine, but you're not going to put a social, you're not going to put any part of the social, not even the last 4 digits. You're not going to put the ID number out to the public.
We do often use usernames because those are email addresses. They're typically quite public and publicly available. We don't technically maintain a public list of them anywhere, but it is something that people use for public communication. On occasion, somebody will come back to us and who's having the kind of issue that Kirsten described before and say, I need to change not only my settings, but I need my username to change, I need my ID number to change, I need some of these other things to change. We comply with those things if there's a good reason behind it,
And I think the email address is not considered private because, as you said, it's a postcard, and so it can be pulled off of communications. That's considered.
It doesn't say anything about your status with the college other than you have status with the college. Students certainly can forward it to some other and communicate from that alternate address.
And if we had a student who had an extreme privacy concern and did not even want to use wanted all of their front-facing name to be an alias, we would comply with that, and their user ID would be also reflect that alias.
We have done various things, and we haven't had to go that far, but we've complied when people have had serious concerns. What we teach at the help desk is that if you have a question about whether something is a FERPA-related record, then you treat it as if it is. If it is about a student and there is an electronic or physical record related to what they're doing with the college, just assume it doesn't matter if it's an email, it doesn't matter if it's a PeopleSoft record, it doesn't matter if it's a note that a faculty member scribbled on their desk. The minute it's in writing somewhere, it's technically speaking, by the strictest definition, a record. Now, that record might go in the shredder and that's not a record anymore. But, that's the one thing that we do teach. And the other rule is don't help the stalkers. So basically, if you have a question about whether you're really talking to the person or not, you can't give that information.
And over the phone, you can't really talk to the person. So you really should never be giving out information over the phone unless it's high-level directory information. And
We do password changes over the phone.
Oh, right.
That's
you
the same thing.
do authentication to do that.
Absolutely. At least 2 forms.
Yes, exactly. And
Although that too is flawed.
yes, well, it is. But the only thing that isn't covered is something called personal notes. And a personal note means that you have kept it and have shown it to no one else. Technically, anything else that you write about a student becomes part of their educational record. Now, you can skirt that piece of the law, as Amy said, throwing in the shredder. But technically, if the moment we got a subpoena or a request from a student, it still existed, and it had been shared, then it would be part of their educational record.
And we could be in trouble for having destroyed it.
Yes, or it could be something that the student gets to see, and if it was not, so whenever you're taking notes about a student, you want to make sure that it's still the same postcard idea. You're writing things that makes sense for what you are reviewing, but you're not making character judgments or things like that that you would not want the student to actually see. Because, the first prong of this rule is about students having access to their records so they can see exactly what's in their folder and what's going on, and if they have every right to see that.
Writing respectfully is also a skill.
There you go, writing respectfully. Yeah, some sort of things that you might not think of, but the asking, where is the student going to be later today? I need to, get something to her. That's a no. That's one of the things that's actually covered. You can't assist people in finding other people because you don't know why they want them. So, knowing where to point people, you need to find a student, go to public safety. Campus safety.
It's never a bad plan to point strange people to public safety. That's just always.
Ignorance. I don't know.
Strange people asking strange questions. I'm sorry, campus safety can help you.
Alright, last few minutes. This is just that was a sample of Securing the Human, which is an online cybersecurity awareness tool that will be rolled out very soon to all community members.
A great deal of confidential
to this
information.
video right now, just a sample. And I wanted to highlight this. This is a data classification table from Georgetown University. Amy actually shared this with me, and we were just talking how this is both a policy document and also it serves as an educational resource. So it informs community members which type of data can be stored on the various platforms over there. You see that Dropbox is no. And like Google Apps, they must be a Google school.
They're so
yeah. So hopefully this is something that will be available to us sooner rather than later.
And this came to my attention because I'm currently a Georgetown student. So it's one of the things that they send around in their educational materials. Hey, did you know you have a Box account? Hey, by the way, you might want to know about this.
Including data known as
okay, so now in the last few minutes, I'd like to play another quick game of what would you do. So I'm going to present you with a scenario that led to a data breach, and I'd like to hear all of your strategies for how you would prevent that. So the first one, a staff member sends an email to their colleague containing an Excel workbook with sensitive college data. The email is intercepted and the data is posted publicly. How would you prevent this from happening?
So we're going to put sensitive data over email.
Okay, what role are we playing when we're...
You are kind of just a fly on the wall.
Well, it seems like one thing that would mitigate against this is if those two staff members had a way to share data that was not email. So if they had a shared network drive or something like that, right? If they're in the same department,
And
that's
we're
not
educated to know
Yeah. But
what safe things were.
if they're in the same department, we already have that. If they're across departments, that's when it gets a little tricky. We gotta get something set up. That's things like that.
Okay, this is not the easy one. Any other suggestions?
Zipper briefcase can do the ad hoc stuff. It's not fun, but it will do it.
And is it that much safer than email?
Internally to the college, absolutely it is. Because it never really goes anywhere. It's always just
It's always on our servers.
It's on our servers.
Better email vendor. That was encrypted.
Well, and the truth of the matter is that our email is very likely to get, I'm going to call it less secure, although there's mitigating factors to that. We are under serious influence to strongly consider either Google or Microsoft as an external email vendor. Right now, we have control over our email. It may not have all the features we want. It may not have all the things we want. But it is very expensive to maintain internally. And there are some very great things about robustness and some other things about having an external email service. there's also some risk that we don't currently have. So I'm not sure that that's, I mean, and most schools have gone to one of those two things already. We're holdouts. And coming from the corporate background that you have, that probably just completely breaks your brain. But
I was just saying, you know, you're gonna negotiate with the, vendor saying, are you breaching our contract? No. I was just kind of saying increase your security. So I'm not really saying that I don't know that we're hosting the tournament. So just saying that whoever hosting the email you to do a better job.
Yeah.
And Google promises you nothing. So
So we don't go to Google.
well, that's my vote, but I don't get all the votes.
There's just some suggestions which you pretty much all covered. And I say encrypt files that are in risk just because we don't have a supported solution provided by Let's College at all. And if you pretty much forget your encryption key, your data is lost and gone forever.
So if your only copy goes into that file, better remember that.
Last example is brief time, but while working at a coffee house, a college laptop computer was stolen from a faculty member while she went to the restroom. The laptop contained 300 student records, including grades, class rosters, and other PII.
Why did she leave it there?
Yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Well, because you probably drop it in the toilet. Well, this is, again, having at least the password to get into the computer. Would help someone that would keep someone like me from getting the data.
Storing it locally is also not the best idea.
Right.
There are ways to store it on shared files.
And so don't store sensitive data on your hard drive, as you said. Don't leave it unattended. Take it with you to the bathroom.
That's expensive, people.
Yeah.
Wait, there was one, delete the information.
Oh, if you no longer need it for academic
But
purposes.
how safe is, I watch CSI, and they're always getting, computed on burned buildings, and they take the drive that's a mistake and they get data from it. So is deleting really something that, how does deletion, is CSI making this up? Or,
To some extent, and to some extent not.
okay,
There
so
are
where's the
excellent
non-
professionals.
Right.
There's a big difference between traditional spinning hard drives and the thing that they call SSDs. There are two different technologies, and how they work is pretty much one is in opposition to the other. In either case, though, if you're a Mac user, there's a thing called Secure Delete or something like that, and that does a better job. It overwrites the data a couple of times. Deleting and emptying your trash in Windows, it allows Windows to eventually write over that space, but it does not, you are absolutely right, guarantee that it is gone 100%.
At least not immediately. It takes a while.
And depending on the size of your hard drive, that could be a long while. So you are right to be concerned. Eventually I'll get to full disk encryption and I'll make the issue go away.
It is still a good idea to delete data that you no longer need, right? If you're using it for a while, if you absolutely want to have an archived copy of it, but if you're, let's say you're taking things down for Bionic and you're working on them locally, right? The Bionic copy is still up there. So once you're done with it, just delete it. And yes, maybe it won't completely delete, but it's better than having all of this, data just on your drive.
I can buy the forensic tools that are used by law enforcement, which should scare you because if I can buy it, so can you. It's not cheap, but it's, I send hard drives out to some guys in California with clean rooms who can do amazing, amazing, amazing things that you would never think. And other times when you think they're going to be able to get it back, they can't. Because it's mechanical. So it's a mixed bag.
We're at time. Thank you for coming. If you have any other security-related questions, contact
Don't call Andrew.
Well, if you want to learn anything, contact me. If you have any other questions, contact me.